We're going to start off with the house rules, but first I would like to take the time to introduce our esteemed guests for this evening. May I recognize Representative Joseph Magnus Palacios, Representative Ray Naraha Yumo, and the Honorable Mayor Donald Flores. Thank you for joining us tonight for Town Hall meeting hosted by your representative in Washington, D.C., Congressman Gregorio Kilili Camacho Sablan. The purpose of tonight's Town Hall meeting is to help you become more aware of the issues that are happening in our nation's capital that affect what we do here in the CNMI. This evening, we're also joined by members of our 17th Commonwealth Legislature who will also be answering questions about various issues that are important to you. So that we have a productive meeting, I would like to remind you of the following. Please silence all cell phones and keep them on vibrate. We also ask you to be respectful of each other's comments and questions. Again, there are two microphones located here on the one side and another one here. They're already both turned on. And as soon as the question and answer session begins, if you can please approach the microphone, introduce yourself, and state your question or ask your question. And again, we encourage everyone to please stick to questions. All of you have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the Congressman's presentation. There are light refreshments available in the reception area. Please help yourselves to them. Please note that the multi-purpose facility rules forbid any food or drink in the main hall, only in the outside lobby. Thank you for your understanding. Now, please help me in welcoming Congressman Gregorio Kilili Camacho Sablan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us in one of a series of town hall meetings that we've had since the first time you sent me to Congress. I am not exactly sure how many, and this is, I think, our 15th meeting. But thank you all for joining us. I was talking to Mr. Davis earlier, just when he was talking, John was here. Oh, there, Mr. Davis. And he said, what we're talking about, I said, well, we're going to just carry on from what where we left off in the last town hall meeting. But I said, but John, you weren't there, right? So, I know, I'm not, sir. John's been a good friend of mine. But since our last town hall meeting, we've introduced again 5 legislation. HR 2236, the Wildlife Refuge System Conservation Semi-Postal Stamp Act. And this is a result of we had a hearing in the subcommittee, and we found out that there are a backlog of maintenance problems throughout our national parks in the country, and which would eventually include, of course, our Marianas Trench Marine Monument here in the Northern Marianas. And what they do is, Congress does is, this would be probably, I think, only the second stamp that they would issue, is that you buy a stamp and you pay a little bit more than what it's really, its currency value, but then the difference goes into a fund that will be used to maintain parks, to catch up with the backlog of maintenance of parks. So this is going to be a national program, so I introduced this stamp. HR 2395, of course, is trying to get the Secretary of Labor, Department of the Secretary of Labor, Hilda Solis, to authorize to permit job corps centers. Last Congress, I had it for the Northern Mariana Islands, and obviously our good friends and from the other territories said, man, you're being selfish. So this year we worked it together, and we have, I'm sorry, on the stamps, we've got 44 co-sponsors on the job corps center, which would now be including the other territories. So we have 27 co-sponsors. The other delegates of the U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Guam, and I, and with the leadership of your public school systems here, have been trying to find increased Title I funding. It's going to be a tough one. This is going to be a tough one, but it basically will increase Title I funding from the current 3.7 to about $7.5 million per year. We're probably looking at 2013 for this. But in Congress, as in any work you do, you have to start early and keep pushing. Nothing against our neighbors in Guam, because there are same people, we're the same people, we're same Americans. But I was at a ceremony here, I think it was December. And I saw, or last year, late last year, and I saw some of our own people from the Northern, our own citizens, taking an oath to join the National Guard. And here we have citizens of the Northern Marianas taking an oath and swearing to the organic act of Guam. And I thought, wow, you know, why do they have to do that when they should be swearing to the Constitution of the Cinema? But that's a National Guard. So we've introduced legislation to try and push to have a National Guard here. That one's going to take another also effort because it involves money, but we need to start our own National Guard so that our own government here can, in the times of emergency, also activate the guards to help in the Northern Marianas. And a number of you, actually I introduced this just a few hours ago, man. See the use of technology, I can be here and introduce legislation in Congress. Because we can only introduce in Congress legislation when they're in session, when we're in session. And today, because the Senate and the House did not agree on adjourning for a recess, so because they don't do that, both the Senate and the House will have every 72 hours, somebody has to walk up there, hit the gavel, call the session to order, and then adjourn. But that gives us an opportunity to also introduce legislation. So I introduced a legislation, it's still a number, that would require a separate United States attorney, a United States Marshal for the Northern Mariana Islands. And hopefully if we do this, we'll have some more attention here, and so have, you know, bring more justice to court. Food stamps. Let me start. I had a long day today. Actually, I've been up since 2:30 working with our DC staff, and I was at the Rotary Club today, and just a little. But anyway, food stamps. Let me just give you a little. I talk to teachers here, and they, you know, they're telling me school's beginning. They're telling me even since last school year that they've noticed that some kids come to school hungry. And I've also seen, heard one argument, maybe it's just, you know, it was just, there was an argument, and people sort of get a little bit frustrated, you know, when they're hungry. They have arguments. But I think it's, for me, and that's why I'm an independent and caucusing with the Democrat, I think the government has a responsibility to act when people are in need. And one of the programs we have in the nation is food stamps. And so in 2009, I lobbied Secretary Busak to give the Northern Mariana Islands increase the NMI block grant for our NAP program, not the full, but our NAP program, an increase of $2 million. We were able to get that increase from 10 to 12 million. And that increase continued in 2010 and 2011. I also alerted the Secretary last year that the government was cutting hours, and this would put more people on food stamps, and we can see that it happened. More people are enrolled, benefits have been cut 25%. There's 500 on the wait list. Today, earlier this, I was talking to a friend of mine, a gentleman who drops by the office once in a while. He asked me a question, he says, I have 6 kids. And when I had 4, I was getting 600. No, when I had 5, I'm getting $600, but now that I have 6, it went to 4. That's because many more people, the block grant is a set amount, it's a cap. And more people have become eligible. Actually, we have over 500 on the wait list. And so imagine what it's like to be on a wait list when you know your children are hungry. We're still trying to get money added to the block grant, and I'm asking the Secretary, look, even if it's just $1 million starting in October, $1 more million, we need all the help we can get. But that's just a temporary fix, because fixed block grants are blocked, and it's what I call the food stamps light. They're not flexible when conditions change, as we've seen in this past year. And so we need to get the national food stamp program here. And benefits for that is like, just take for example in Guam, per person monthly in Guam is something like $218. Here it's $88. We're the same, Americans. We're just separated by 100 miles. And yet they have a program that is able to accommodate their people and make sure they have enough to eat. If we get into the food program, we could bring, right now we're getting 12 million, we could bring another 12 to $24 million into our economy. Don't forget, food stamps are direct retail one. People get the stamps and people get their allotments, and they go straight to the store and spend the money. And that would benefit, we see the increase, that would benefit, you know, from the shipping to wholesale to retail. It will benefit even those of us who are not in the program, because it will bring prices down because of the demand of the products. And one very important thing also, because under this food program we have to go into the plastic cards, the debit cards, it will reduce fraud. I have been informed that there are reasons to think that, you know, some businesses are using food stamp for different purposes, and we need to fix that before we lose the program. But some local official here has said that we can't afford the cost. Under the President Block Grant Program, the federal government pays for 100% of administrative costs. Right now, we understand it's like 1.3 million a year. If we get into the food program, the CNMI government will need to pay half of that. So if it's 1.3 million, say 700,000 a year, say 1 million a year, just let's exaggerate, say 1 million a year. We get another 12 to $24 million into the economy. And not just is that a good investment, even at $1 million, if we get another 24, which is 36, that's 3% or 4% of the program. But just imagine the government revenue that can be collected, both at the excise tax when they first come in, at the wholesale, and then at the retail. We're actually having someone compute this now to explain to some of our officials here, show them the numbers, and says, look, it shows that you get more in taxes just by allowing the food program. We make sure people get enough to eat, and we reduce fraud. I mean, what's not to like about that? Why are we objecting to this? I introduced legislation for this, but I really didn't have to, because all we need to do is our government here. Every year they go and they negotiate with USDA officials, FNS officials in San Francisco. But every year they go, they negotiate for block grant. Why don't they make a proposal to get us into the food program? The Secretary of Agriculture has the authority to include us in the food program. And so I asked FNS, why don't we get into the food program? Well, it's your government that needs to ask. And so I'm asking, since 2009, letter after letter, after letter, after letter, after letter, after letter, after letter, I've never got a response on any of those letters. No response. When we see right now that people need help, so again, I introduced the ADUDA Act, and I'm trying to get that into the Farm Bill so that even if one or two officials here don't want it, we'll be forced to take it, whether we like it or they like it or not. But it's easier administratively. All we need to do is ask. Hold on, that's food stamp. Let me get into healthcare. Now Janice is going to be over. You know, critics say Obamacare is a bad thing. I supported Obamacare. I supported healthcare reform. And I worked hard to get the Northern Marianas in. The House version of Obamacare, of healthcare, was very generous to the Northern Marianas. But the Senate version was not. The Senate version had $250,000 a year in additional Medicaid money for us. So that's $2.5 million for 10 years. And so I asked my colleagues in the caucus, the Hispanic caucus, can we go and meet the president, you know? Hey, we need to ask, right? They wanted something else. I wanted one thing. The caucus was going to ask for this huge thing that they knew the president was not going to give them. So I said, if we ask the president for two things, one, we know he's not going to give you that. He can't say no to both because this is much smaller. So we went to a meeting at the White House. Supposedly he gave us 30 minutes. The meeting lasted an hour and a half. I left the meeting, no commitment, you know, he's the president. He said, I gotta go upstairs. My wife's waiting for me and my two kids. So we left. I think it was a day after or 2 days after, when the White House called our office and said, get all territorial delegates. Staff only, no members. The members begged too much. And we got $158 million for Medicaid for the Northern Marianas. 3.12 million of that money has been drawn down on July 12th. Actually, it could have been drawn down on the 1st, but the federal government sometimes missed out, you know, sometimes they take the time. So we had to get involved and we told CNN, hey, get that money to them. So 3.12 billion of that money was drawn in July 12th. I understand the hospital were able to buy some supplies and pay some diagnostic services or something. And then I just found out also that they may have drawn down, they just drawn down another 5 million last Friday, Thursday or Friday, and that they're going to be able to pay some of the clinics. But some of the clinics are owed a lot of money. And so we're starting to draw down something that some people have said is a bad thing, but we're getting the benefits here now. We're able to, the challenge is obviously, some of you read the paper, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals have just ruled against healthcare. Consumer protections which apply here, as they say, are unconstitutional. And this includes, like one of the things that I like about the healthcare reform is that a family who has health insurance can carry their children in their policy up to the age 26. So, you know, so when they go to college, you don't have to buy them entirely new insurance. But the 11th Circuit said that's unconstitutional, and I know some people here are trying to get their kids covered, and insurance companies here are resisting. We have got court challenge, you know, the law gets more difficult to enforce, and it's frustrating for parents. It's frustrating for me because they come to me for this help. And let me get to something that Riot attacks today. In the healthcare reform, there is a provision there that the Northern Marianas, American Samoa, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands will share a pot of $75 million. This $75 million is to help those who are not on Medicaid, middle class, and the territories, pay for the cost of health care, pay for the cost of premium of health care. The difference between what it costs and what they can afford. Again, these are for people who are not on Medicaid, who make too much money to make Medicaid, and many of us here are not on Medicaid. The cost between your premium and what you can afford to pay. The federal government is giving us access to this fund that says the federal government will give to the CNMI. I mean, give to you as a tax credit, I understand, or some kind of arrangement that costs the difference between what you can afford and the cost of your health insurance. Or, if the Northern Marianas government decides they don't want the money, all that money will go back into Medicaid. Will go into Medicaid. The thing that riled me up is that the federal government is gave the Northern Marianas, gave territories on the states. The states have their own, but for the Northern Marianas, gave us an offer, made an offer of $1 million for us to decide, to study the decision, for us to study whether this thing can be good for us, for middle class in the Northern Marianas, for those who can't afford health insurance, but who are not eligible for Medicaid. 49 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, and the U.S. Virgin Islands took the money. 49 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, the U.S. Virgin Islands took the money. The Northern Mariana Islands turned down $1 million. We still get our share of the $75 million, but you have to go to Medicaid. But why couldn't we take the money and study the issue? Why say no without really knowing what it can do for us? Why do we say no to helping middle class people buy health insurance? At the very least, take the money, give out $1 million worth of sole source contracts. At least we'll make some consultants happy. But no, we turned down $1 million. Everyone else took it. And Medicare, we were able to finally pin down the CMS to put it in writing that Medicare, for now, Medicare, for those who are on Medicare, if you need to see a doctor, there are Medicare qualified doctors here. But if you need access to a hospital and the services are not provided at CHC, for example, you can go, even if it's for non-emergency care, you can go to the Philippines and access a hospital there. You don't need to go kiss someone's ring and wait for medical referral if you're on Medicare. Because at this moment, those people on Medicare are usually elderly. So you can go and access a hospital in the Philippines. You can do it in Hawaii too. But the Philippines is closer. And some of us prefer to go there because it's closer to us. So that's really nothing new. We just have to pin down CMS and because we always knew on emergency you can do it, but now we've got them to put in writing that even on non-emergency, if the services are not offered here, so you can use your Medicare there. We're trying to find out which hospital will do this, and this is something that I want to also give credit where credit is due. It was senators that, 4 senators that were there in March when they brought this issue to me, and they had a meeting with HHS, so we just kept pushing. We said, look, we found this is what we think we can do, and it took us a while to get them to put it in writing, but we have the letter. We shared it with our officials here, and actually I shared it yesterday with our Secretary of Health. So, but we got it in writing from Dr. Mark Borwick, and I think it's in part of the handouts. Some of you that handout will be able to see that later. I'm also very happy to finally, I didn't know it took this long, but to get some of the earmarked money moving here. I had a meeting today with Jane Mack earlier this morning, and she's getting use of her $180,000. I also read in the paper last week that PSS has finally been able to start using their $250,000 earmark for the Chamorro Refalawas programs that they have in the schools. I also got earlier, Tony Pellegrino told me that he was able to start drawing down on his $200,000 grant. I watching the news the other night. I'm happy Mr. Arlo Palacios has finally decided. We almost lost that money. But working with Mr. Palacios, we were able to get an extension to September of 2012 for the scoping of the Marianas Trench Monument. I'm happy that Arnold finally getting his hands on that. I don't know if the lighthouse is appropriate. I think it's not, but I'm also hoping that he would use the additional $200,000 that we gave him for Garpan for public market, help out the farmers a little bit. And earmarks are good, I think. I was able to get 1.4 million, I think it's 1.35, 1.4 million last year. Earmarks are good for us, for the Northern. It helps disadvantaged areas, because if we have to compete with grants with the likes of California, Texas, or New York, we really are disadvantaged. But with earmarks, we can target specifically target the needs of our small community. And actually, I also read that the library will also start using this $200,000 grant, and they're going to retrofit and do some energy saving on their facilities. And that's what earmarks does. And I'm very happy that we're able to start using some of the money that we did. Am I going too fast for you, or am I boring you? The mayor also, I want to congratulate Mayor Flores. He got $90,000 in money for technical assistance money to start his straight off program. I wish him well on that, and if there's anything that we need from us, Mayor. In 2009 again, and I'm sorry I keep going back, because when I got to Congress I had a huge agenda, and geez, let's get moving. Actually, my staff sometimes tell me slow down. But one of the things I met Mr. Astro, who is the administrator for Social Security Administration, and I asked him, and we have this huge problem called retirement fund in the Northern Mariana Islands. Government employees are not on Social Security. Some of them are putting money into the fund and don't know if at 62 they'll get something. Can we find a way to work this out? I said, yeah. So I came here. Actually, I wrote the governor and asked him, look, can we start working on this? Social Security is willing to help. Are you willing to, get involved? And of course, what do I expect, right? I don't get a response, no response. But I'm very optimistic, because our Lieutenant Governor has finally, just earlier this year, I read in the paper that he's a little concerned and saying, why don't we do this? So I met with him. I met with him, I think 2 or 3 times. I invited him here tonight, but we must respect the fact that he's mourning the loss of his wife, so he couldn't make it. He had his staff call us and says, look, I want to be there, but can I just come? So we respect that. And so we're starting a conversation with him where we're trying to figure out a way to do some structural changes that will serve these purposes. It will ensure that those who are already retired will get their benefits for as long as they live. And it will also protect those that are already vested in the program. But for those that are not vested in the program, I think it's called class 1, that will have to wait until they turn 62 to retire. We have to explain to them that at 62, you may not have anything there for you. I know our legislators have considered, and I think they passed, right? Congressman Sablan passed the $200 million thing. That's it. Come on. Because we've been looking at this, and we're thinking that even if we take $200 million and pump it into the fund, it's still in trouble. But I think if we are able to fix this structural and reduce the problem by allowing those people who have been in government for so long, including those who have been in government for say 10 years, who have not had social, because there are people in government for 20 years who have made no contribution to Social Security. Allow them to transfer to Social Security by asking Social Security to allow them to pay for that 10 years that they've been in government, for example, and be vested in Social Security. Pay that 40 quarters is what they call it. I don't know if that's possible, but that's the idea we're looking at. And by doing that, we're taking away members from defined benefit, from not defined contribution, defined benefit, and putting them into a system that they can expect some return. decreasing the demand, or what does it have there for? The unfunded liability, decreasing the unfunded liability to Social Security. And then we can go to the legislature and says, after calculating this, they really don't need $200 million. For the remainders of those programs, this is what we need. Then we can send to pass and come out and ask the public, can we take care of this problem by issuing that bond? But we need to reduce the problem, because it's going to cost too much money. We're going to take money and throw it in there, and it's not going to solve the problem over, because it is a generous program. So that's what the general conceptualized that the Lieutenant Governor and I are talking. We're even at a point where I'm considering retaining someone who has a financial expertise, not just in his capacity, but also has been involved in the Northern Marianas government. And that the Lieutenant Governor said if we do that, we guarantee that he has access to financial data so that we can compute this and then approach, go back to Social Security and says, here's the problem, here's the offer. Well, we asked us, can we do it in current dollars instead of past dollars? It's going to be more expensive if it's past dollars, but that's where we're headed. Well, I got so many issues to talk about, but I want to give you guys time to ask your questions. So I want to go to the last issue for now. HR 1466. I want to make it very clear. HR 1466 does nothing, absolutely nothing, to grant citizenship or United States permanent resident status to anyone that become eligible under 1466. It doesn't allow anyone to receive Medicaid. It doesn't allow anyone to receive food stamps. It certainly doesn't allow anyone to vote. HR 1466 will allow those people of those three groups for now who already have status under our law. You know those IRs? Our law gives them status here. You know those CNMI permanent residents? Our law gives them status here. And those 91 individuals born between 1974 and January 7 of 1978. Those are the three classes. It does not give anyone access to any of the programs, and it doesn't give anyone the right to vote. The fourth class are the parents of U.S. citizen children. Let me tell you. Last week, I met one sailor and one Marine, who came to the office. Well, even before that, let me show you, let me go. 3 months ago, a Marine who was in Afghanistan wrote to me and said, I need your help because I'm concerned that my father will have to leave on November 28, 2011. A Marine fighting the war in Afghanistan is concerned that this community is going to deport his father. Last week, I met a Marine in an Army officer, and a sailor who came to the office asking for help to ensure that their parents will not be deported on November 27 while they are there fighting the war. Altogether, the best numbers out there in the public domain, according to GAO, according to U.S. Department of Interior, and according to DHS, all together, and according to our own numbers that we've worked with PSS, they can number students. PSS calculates, does census of students. Whose your parents are you for? Your parents for? The best numbers out there say that there's no more than 4,000 of these individuals that will be helped by 1466. No more than 4,000. I know that some people in our government have said 11,000. Well, here's what they said. It's 11,000. But because they don't know exactly how many, they're asking that we wait for the census so we'll know. Which is it? 11? Or that you don't really know and you want to wait for the census so we'll know? GAO has agreed with me that it's about 4,000. Government Accounting Office, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Interior has said that it's, at one time actually I said it's 3,000. But they got corrected, I got corrected. It's more than that, 4,000. And so 1466, we're working on it. I introduced the same legislation last Congress. I had 0 sponsors. Jesus. This time I've got, what, 47 already? And this legislation is not a product of just our office. This legislation is a product of both sides of the aisle. In both houses of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats have worked on this over time. In both houses. The most difficult member of Congress, the most difficult member of Congress on immigration is the chairman of Judiciary, Lamar Smith. And I met with him, I asked him, I said, Mr. Chairman, this is the situation here. That these people are not immigrants. These people did not cross the border. These people were already here. And Congress passed the law and extended the borders and included them. And so what exactly are we going to do about this? So we need to fix it. That's why I'm trying to help and pass HR 1466. Chairman Lamar Smith had 3 objections to it. We took care of 2.